Today I'm going to be giving you guys the ultimate zero build guide. You probably wonder how pros and creators are able to win games back to back, hitting high ranks every season along with placing well in tournaments. Well, after spending thousands of hours playing and placing well myself in events, I figured it out. So here are the secret tips zero build pros don't want you to know. In zero build, there are 3 things you need to master, being movement, game mechanics, and above all else, your aim. So everything we talk about in this video is going to revolve around these topics, with the first thing being enabling visual audio. I know there's likely a chance you can hear fine, but you put yourself at a disadvantage not having this setting on. It provides a huge competitive advantage, and you will see a lot of pros use it no matter what game mode they're playing. It'll not only make it easier to observe the area you're landing for how many players are contesting you, but it'll also make it easier to locate chests for loot. You should also take note of how many people are landing close to you at different POIs. This information will help you understand when to take fights to lower your chances of getting third party. For example, I'm landing at Doom's Court and check to see how many players are landing with me, how many players are landing at Doom Castle, and how many players are landing at the train station. Next is your loadout. Now the order in which you have these items isn't necessarily important, so keep that in mind as I go down the list. For my first slot, since I play on controller, I carry my primary weapons like ARs, SMGs, and pistols. This is usually the best option because it allows for quick transitions to my second slot, which I always put my shotgun. You can see here I'm able to switch back and forth between my first and second slots while fighting. Another thing is you want to make sure you're always carrying an automatic shotgun. Speed is key in zero builds, and usually carrying a slow firing weapon up close will more than likely lose you fights. For my third slot, I always have utility items such as bubbles or bunkers. Too many players don't carry either of these, which leave them wide open if there's no natural cover, especially if they don't have any form of mobility, which brings me to my next slot. Mobility always goes in my fourth slot, so items like hover jets, for example, or shockwaves. Although keep in mind if you're playing competitive tournaments for money, hover jets won't be available. And for my fifth slot, I always put my healing items like Flowberry Fizz, med kits, and splashes. This allows me to have some options with healing. For example, if I'm getting pushed while healing, I can quickly switch to my primary weapon in my first slot, or I can switch to a movement item and run. Some movement strategies you can do are pairing the shockwaves with Flowberry Fizz for extended distance, and if you slide while doing this, it'll increase the distance even more. You can also pair Flowberry Fizz with launch pads to go extremely high and far. Both of these strategies also work with the regular Flowberry. Now let's talk about your mid-game strategy. When in mid-game, avoid prolonged fights. You need to prioritize positioning yourself on dead side of the zone while also claiming whatever the current height position is. So many pro players understand the importance of high ground because it gives you info like seeing where other players are, where extra loot you may need for later from old fights is located, and more importantly, it makes you a harder target to push. Next is optimizing your sprinting. I can guarantee some of you use your sprint way too much and have probably been in situations that if you had sprint to go hide behind cover, you wouldn't have gotten knocked or eliminated. This is something I had to learn the hard way, but I'm going to help you so you don't have to. The first thing is jumping while sprinting barely increases distance, so you're better off just sprinting to a location or cover, and if someone is shooting at you, try sliding and zigzagging, mainly because sprinting and sliding takes you further and faster. In fact, the only time I recommend sprinting and jumping is to swing a corner that an enemy might be around. Other than that, conserve your sprint and stop sprinting everywhere, because it would suck if you're full sprinting and a random enemy player starts fighting you when you're low on sprint. Now let's talk about gunplay. Some gunplay techniques to try are weapon swapping, like I mentioned earlier, to maximize damage output. This is very effective if you're using weapons that do high damage like a Monarch pistol and a shotgun, because at that point you're basically double pumping. Also, utilize cover and right hand peeking to gain an advantage in fights. There is literally no benefit in left hand peeking because most of your body will be exposed when you're aiming, which is our next topic. Like I said before, aiming is one of the most, if not the most important parts of zero build, so you really should aim practice, especially before playing ranked or any competitive mode. Now that's not to say your aim can't improve with in-game experience, but aim trainers allow you to address your sensitivity if tracking feels off without risking losing a fight. Next up is seasonal changes. Familiarize yourself with new items and new mechanics each season to adapt quickly. Knowing where certain items are like cars, NPCs, chest type, and more will increase your chances of winning. For example, when I land Sandy, I know at the back house there will always be an Avengers chest that will hopefully give me a hover jet, so I have some form of movement early on. If you want to have information on the map and spawns, I'll leave a link to a loop map in the description of this video. Now we're going to talk about some fighting tips. First, avoid unnecessary reloading and ensure weapons are already reloaded before engaging. I can't tell you how many times I've died all because I thought my weapons were reloaded when they're not, or when I've reloaded and got pushed mid reload. Also, you should really be practicing bubble fighting. Bunkers are useful, but bubbles spawn way more, so you're going to have them more than likely. So learning things like slide kicking to get players out of your face will make you a bubble fighting pro. Lastly is vehicle tips. It's obvious cars aren't going anywhere, so you might as well learn how to use them to your advantage. First thing is learning how to change seats before exiting a vehicle to position yourself better in potential combat situations. For example, if you see a player you want to fight on your left side, switch to the passenger seat so when you exit you'll have a right hand peek. Also keep in mind you can hop in other players' cars and shoot through the windshield to get easy damage off. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you're getting shot while rotating in a car, you can throw a shield bubble on it so it won't take damage. For Zero Build controller players, I'm going to leave a link to a video if you're trying to find the best settings. Hopefully this video helped you guys out, and I'll see you soon.